Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. You know, ever so often when I make these videos, I'm a little shocked, I guess you could say. I'm caught off guard that a particular video that I was not expecting to gain an emotional reaction does, in fact, get an emotional reaction, sometimes quite harsh. And people get mad and say they're going to unsubscribe and that I'm wrong and that all of this kind of stuff. That, I'm not the American and patriot that you thought that I was, and all this kind of stuff. Well, this morning's video was, in fact, one of those videos. I was not expecting the reaction that I received from people. And I want to set the record straight on some things and to clarify, because there seems to be a lot of misinformation out there going on. For one thing, if for any moment you think that I am okay, or that I support the fact that there are illegals that have come into this country by the millions and that are here, regardless of whether they are violent gang member criminals or just workers, you would be sadly mistaken. You must be new around here, because I've had videos demonetized, removed, and even had a big old hit piece from Media Matters about how I'm such a xenophobic, bigoted, hateful, anti-immigrant person. So yeah, you've got things wrong in that area. There's also seems to be a lot of mistakes in facts, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because people are just kind of taking in too much propaganda, even if it's from the right, or if they're just not thinking, or if they're just not aware of the full situation. But let's talk about all of these illegals that are being rounded up, because you can go back in my videos, and I've made a ton of videos talking about all the illegals, showing all kinds of evidence about them pouring across this country and talking about all the things that could happen and will and did happen because of their presence here. Well, now the Trump administration is talking about how they are rounding up to 1,000 of them a day and kicking them out of the country. And it does appear that the vast majority of those that they are rounding up are of the violent criminal element. Now, I understand just the fact that they're here doesn't mean that they are criminal. Even if they don't commit a lot of crimes, they're most likely committing a crime to get an ID, or committing a crime to maybe sign a document like a rental agreement or anything like that. I'm trying to differentiate between those folks and the ones that are violent criminals. They are here to run drugs, human traffic, commit violent acts. They're parts of gangs. It does seem that the majority that's being rounded up fall under that category. But there's also reports of lots and lots of them self-deporting. And a lot of the ones that are self-deporting are not the criminal element, because it makes sense that the criminal elements may not self-deport so easily, because they have, they're making money, they're big money, they're running criminal organizations, or part of those criminal organizations, and they feel that they may be able to evade the law. Whereas the other element, they're not really trying to evade the law. They're just trying to have a job, get on with their life, and so they don't want to end up in prison or not be able to come back here legally. So they may be self-deporting and then trying to go through a legal process. Who knows? But there are reports, in fact, of farmers over the last week or two saying that lots and lots of their workers are not showing up. They're gone. They're just leaving. And so that is happening. And this is in the beginning stages of this. I mean, Trump hasn't been in office that long, folks. So as the weeks and months progress, if this policy continues, which I suspect it will, and I'm in favor of it, there's a good chance that more and more of the non-violent criminal illegals will also be self-deporting and eventually be rounded up and deported also. So there are some facts right there. A lot of people seem to think that that illegals are not working on farms, that illegals are only here because they're criminals and they're here to commit crimes. That is not true. It's estimated that between 10 and 20 million have crossed the border illegally just under Biden's administration, not including beforehand. If all of those were violent gang-banging criminals, our crime rates would be substantially higher, folks. So many people said, oh, no, farmers, they use, worker visas to get their employees. They may do that sometimes, but statistics and studies show, even as of last year, that 45 to 50% of all farm workers in the United States are undocumented. They are here illegally. High numbers also show that construction workers and lawn care workers and other service industries are here illegally. So it's not just the violent criminal elements that are here. There are a lot of just workers here. And you're not going to find Americans to immediately replace them, folks. It's just not going to happen. Most of these folks a lot of times make $6, $8 an hour, even if they make $10 to $15 an hour. They're not getting benefits. Health care, they're not having, Social Security taxes paid in on them, and it's very physical work most of the time. It takes a healthy, able-bodied person to do it. You find me someone under 30 years old today that is physically capable of handling manual labor, strenuous manual labor, and it's willing to do it for $6, $8, $10 an hour and not get any benefits whatsoever. You're not going to find it. You can't hardly find people under 30 and especially under 25 to 20 that will do that kind of stuff for $15 and $20 an hour. It's just not going to happen. And if employers, these farmers and other employers, have to start hiring American or legal workers, they're going to have to pay them more. They're going to have to pay insurance. They're going to have to pay all sorts of other benefits. I am not opposed to these things. Understand that. I am not opposed to them. I just want to make it clear and inform you that there's probably going to be some upset. There's going to be some rough spots ahead down the road, and that we should prepare for them. That was the whole point of the message, is that there could be food shortages. There could be increase in prices and things. I'm not opposed to these things happening, but we need to prepare for them. And that's why you should be more self-sufficient. You see, for some reason, facts don't really care about your feelings. They just don't. And to be quite frank, I don't give too much concern for them either. And I know that some people get really upset and get their feelings hurt, and then they want to scream to the top of their lungs to everyone listening that they're unsubscribing or they're leaving the chat or whatever. I don't understand that either. These things are, in fact, happening. There are people leaving this country that are not necessarily being deported. They are self-deporting. And we're going to most likely watch prices rise, not just because of that. We've got tariffs being placed on countries, and some of those countries we get a lot of food from. We have an economy that even Donald Trump himself has admitted is going to probably have a big upset over the next 6 months to a year. There's been a lot of people predicting that, by spring and summer, we could see a stock market crash. Just today, one company, tech company, lost something like $600 billion in stock value. There's a lot of stuff going on in the economic world and in the tariffs and the taxes, and then stuff like the H5N1, where they're killing off chickens and other types of poultry and farm animals. And then a percentage of farm workers could very quickly be removing themselves from the workers group. So all of that stuff combined does indicate that we could be seeing some shortages and some price increases, and we should be prepared for that. This is not a difficult concept, folks. This has actually happened many times. I've said before, for instance, with social welfare, I am opposed to welfare. I understand that there are some people that actually do need it, but those ones that actually need it tend to be a very small number. I think welfare, all it does is encourage laziness, lessens productivity and ingenuity, and it's a bad system. But if we ended the welfare system tomorrow, if it was immediately cut off and the rug was pulled out from under Americans, it would probably collapse the system overnight. It would be a very bad, rough thing for a while. In the end, it could be good, but in the beginning, it's going to be rough. And as much as we hate to admit these things, we have allowed these massive systems to build to the point that when you go to trying to fix them, you're going to have a lot of problems along the way. Even positive solutions can have negative reactions to them. A good example of that, and then, boy, I'm gonna upset some more people. I kind of enjoy that. Okay, I'll admit I'm gonna upset some more people. Go back to the American Civil War, or the war between the states, or the War of Northern Aggression. As much as some of you may disagree, one of the big deciding factors in that whole conflict was the fact that the North wanted the South to end slavery immediately. The South was not opposed to ending slavery. They just said that they could not end it immediately because they had no infrastructure in place to take the place of the slave workers. And if they did this, or they had to start paying them higher wages and all of this kind of stuff, it would cause an economic collapse in the South. And so the South for many years was saying, please, just let us gradually, over time, little by little, free the slaves so that we can build infrastructure along the way to take care of it. Now, I hate slavery. I think it's wrong, and I understand that it would mean that they're still being slaves for a while. But the fact remains is that if you took them out from underneath them, the South would have collapsed. At the time of the Civil War, the South was the wealthiest part of this country, not just in wealth, but in all factors. It was the center of art and literature and music and production. When the South seceded and formed the Confederacy, they became one of the wealthiest nations on this planet. But afterwards, the South became extremely poor, much like a third world nation. And even to this day, the poorest areas of the South and most undeveloped are the South, with the least amount of industry, the least amount of productivity of arts and literature and all that it's in the South. And it's because of the Civil War. They still have not recuperated from the Civil War because it was not a gradual. Every other nation that had slaves and that ended slavery did it gradually. Go back and look at the British Empire during the 1820s and 30s. They did it gradually. Everywhere did it, except in the South, and we see today still the repercussions for that. That's what I'm talking about, folks. I'm not opposed to those actions happening. Yes, it's going to be a harsh ripping of the bandage off, and it's going to hurt. But what I'm telling you is that you need to be ready for it. You need to be prepared. If these policies that are happening right now continue, there is a higher and higher probability that we're going to see some rough spots ahead of us. Regardless of what you say, there are a lot of illegals that are workers today. There are a lot of illegals on farms today. The statistics and the studies show that over and over and over again. And it also shows recently that they are, in fact, self-deporting. If they continue to self-deport, there's going to be less and less of them. And the options are to pay a lot higher in prices so that they can hire American workers, or to switch over to robotics and artificial intelligence to do it all. And you might say, because I saw it this morning, I'm willing to pay higher prices to have American workers. I don't think most of you have any understanding of the higher prices that we're talking about. The reason why, and it's not right, but it's happened in virtually every other prosperous nation throughout human history. The reason why the nation has prospered in a lot of ways is because there has been a huge block of very cheap labor, which causes prices of things to stay fairly low. And that cheap labor may come from illegals. It may come from sending it overseas to China or to Mexico or wherever. As much as you don't like it, it is a fact. And if they have to start paying American workers with all this minimum wage minimums that are out there, and paying them insurance and paying them all sorts of benefits, your head of lettuce isn't going to be $2 or $3 a head. It's probably going to be $10 or $15 a head. The prices of things aren't going to increase by percentage. They're going to increase by fold. Okay, it's not going to be a 10% or a 15% price increase, most likely. It could be many times higher than what it is. And so it's just simply saying, well, I'm willing to pay a higher price so that we can have American workers and get rid of the illegals. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? You may be willing, but are you able? Because the vast majority of people, even now today, choose a cheaper option many times over an American-made, more expensive option. And it's not because they don't want the American-made, more expensive option. It's because they cannot afford it. It's all about economics, folks. And so that's why I'm telling you, if you want to stick to your guns on this, then you need to start producing your own stuff. You need to become more and more self-sufficient. Because if these policies continue, they're not bad policies. It's a good thing to get rid of all the illegals. I understand you're going to say, yeah, but that's less of them on welfare. And I get all that, but it's still producing cheap food. Okay, it's still producing cheaper homes, cheaper products, because the labor is, oh, any of you business owners, you know this, labor is always your biggest expense. And if somehow you can reduce that labor, then you can make more money and you can produce a cheaper product. And so that's what has happened for decades. It's not just since Biden took office, it's been decades. And if those policies truly dramatically change to where now we don't have all of these illegal workers, you're going to have some really expensive stuff in this country. Also, the tariffs on things from China and other places. And you can say, well, there's that H-1B program. They're still not going to get away with paying them $6, $8 an hour with that program, folks. They're still going to have to pay them more. And so you better get ready, because as much as we all want to be a pro-America, made in America, all this kind of stuff, I've said this before in videos, this country has lost the capability of being that. And the only way for us to get back to that is a lot of years of hardship of building that infrastructure. You cannot rip the rug out from underneath it overnight and just expect all those workers and all that equipment that's in other countries be replaced and rebuilt here overnight. It's just not going to happen. And I'm not opposed to those things. I'm just telling you, you need to be ready. You need to be ready. You need to have your stockpiles. You need to be producing your own food. Because if this stuff continues, you're going to see higher food prices. It's just almost inevitable. And all the numbers show that over and over and over again. This has been talked about actually for months now in the news, not top page, front page news, but that farmers are worried, have been worried about Trump's policies that he said he put into place, because they would lose lots of workers. They would lose cheap labor. Need to get ready, folks. You may not agree with me, but I'm pretty solid on my facts. I believe this. And it's not an ego. It's the fact that I've done the research. It's there. Look at it. You need to get ready. Get your houses in order. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.